We'll call our meeting in order.
You have to.
Who wants to lead off?
Is Dave on?
He's right there. Yep. he's
Mr.
here.
Mr. Botar's on.
Gina's on by
Yep.
Zoom too.
Yep.
Hi, Gina.
Hi.
Hey, Steve, how are you? Dave, do you know everyone before we get going? You have your-
I'm good. You know, most of the folks.
Bradley, Ravenel, and I'll get it right. Okay, why don't you run down about what we've been doing, Dave, and we'll have some discussion around you.
Mhm. Thank you.
Did you ask me to lead, Brett, on this?
I did.
Okay. Well, I think the issue or the question of the day is relative to the federal EDA grant that we've been talking about for months at a time. I spoke with a number of board members a few weeks ago. I did have a conversation this morning with Mark Chambers, your attorney, or excuse me, your engineer on this project, just to confirm some numbers, some cost. So there's certainly been some clarity. As you may recall, as most of you recall, the county IDA did submit an application to the Federal Economic Development Administration back in March of this year. It was an application my office prepared on behalf of the IDA, working with your staff and your consulting engineer. Total project costs that was included in that grant application, $1.3 million, $1,321,000. That was the cost estimate provided by CNS engineers for this project. It included $103,000 for engineering fees, $60,000 and change for contingency, construction contingency, and an additional $30,000 to cover construction management, administration, legal, accounting. So that's how we got to the $1.3 million. This particular federal grant is very rich in the sense that the grant rate, the federal government would cover 80% of the project cost, and the IDA would be responsible for the other 20%. So the grant application that went in, we asked for just a little over $1 million from EDA, and then those funds combined with the balance of funds you have available from the state grant that was awarded, I believe last year or maybe even the year before for this project, that state grant, Empire State Development Grant, some $280,000 and change. Portion of that grant was used, as explained to me anyways, last summer by staff with the IDA, was used for phase one. So there's about $180,000 left in that grant. So the federal grant, a little over $1 million, the state grant, a little over $180,000, and the balance from the IDA would cover the $1.3 million cost. The grant application with EDA, it has, it's complete. They've completed their internal sort of first review, which one determines that the IDA is an eligible applicant, two, that the project is eligible for funding, and that the grant application is complete. All of that, we have met those initial tests. So the next step is the application goes before a group, it's called the Investment Review Committee. So this is staff that works for the Federal Economic Development Administration in their Philadelphia regional office. Generally, the IRC consists of 3 senior staff members. They review a pile of grant applications, and they make the determination of which projects to fund. I was told last week that the next meeting of the Investment Review Committee will be held either the second or third week of May. So what I have been saying is that by the end of May, we should know, we should have a preliminary indication one way or another, yes or no, that EDA is going to, whether they're going to fund the project. If the preliminary answer is yes, see Mr. Chambers has joined us on this call. Thanks, Mark.
Hey, guys.
If the IRC determination is yes, we want to fund this project, then there's a period of time, 6 to 8 weeks, depending upon if there's any additional information they need for the application. I don't believe there's any additional information that we could provide, but they do a little bit of more due diligence on technical aspects of the proposal, and they have to issue the formal grant award, the paperwork. So, you know, if we have a decision mid-May, we should have the, you know, let's assume that's affirmative, a positive decision. We should have a formal grant award letter from EDA, I would say by the first or second week of July. Once you have the grant award, then, you know, the project, you can proceed. The typical next step would be to issue, prepare the bid documents. And I understand this project was, you know, previously bid back last summer. But as I've been indicating, at least recently, I believe for a number of months, I believe EDA will require you to rebid the project. I don't believe that they will accept the bid that was awarded last summer. We have strategically, or I have advised, you know, the IDA and staff strategically. I still do not want to press EDA to get an answer on the question about whether they would require it to be rebid, because I think that would jeopardize the funding award. The way EDA is operating these days, any projects that have any controversy, any uncertainty, any confusion around them, they tend not to fund. And so to raise questions right now about a potential bidding question, I think would jeopardize the award. So I have been advising not to ask the question, go through this process and look for, you know, a determination, the preliminary determination by the end of May. If, you know, the schedule I'm outlining, and I discussed this with Mark this morning. So if we want to talk strategy for a moment, I believe I outlined this very quickly last time, but let me go through it again. If you have the preliminary decision by EDA by the end of May, I would suggest at that point that you go ahead and authorize CNS engineers to prepare the new bid documents so that you have that bid document ready to issue once you have the formal grant award from EDA in early July. The reason why you need to wait to issue a new bid is you have to incorporate into the bid documents standard boilerplate legal certification language into the bid document, which you could certainly obtain right now from EDA's procedures and regulations, but there's one key piece that we won't have until the award letter is issued, and that is the award number. So this is, you know, bureaucracy in minutia, but the bid document has to reference the specific grant award number for this project. And we won't have that grant award number until the letter is issued. So I think you could proceed to have the bid documents ready to go as soon as you get the award letter. Let's just build in, you know, let's say we get it the second week of July. issue the bid documents immediately. And they're out on the street for, let's say, 30 days. So that would put us into mid-August. Bid review takes us to the end of August, get to contract in September, with the contractor starting work October 1 of 2022. And discussing the schedule with Mark this morning. Conservative number as a contractor for a project like this should be able to build about 200 linear feet of pipe per day. So you're talking 27 days, work days. The question has come up, I believe, in our last discussion relative to the pump station and the lead time to secure the pump station. The information that Mr. Chambers has is about 15 weeks of lead time in order to get the pump station. So if the contract is awarded October 1st, obviously we would have the pump station, or the contractor would have it in-house, early in January. And we should easily be able to complete the project by the end of March. And I'm building in cushions here. I think Mark would confirm that. But if we have an award of October 1st, I think the project can certainly be completed by the end of March of 2023. So I've thrown out a lot of information. Mark, I don't know if you want to chime in here with anything that I may have missed or clarify.
Yeah, and I apologize for being a little late to the phone call here, but you mentioned the new contract documents. What I only thing I really see changing on the contract documents would be the specification, the spec book, basically, right? The contract documents would stay the same that Probst put together, showing the pump station and the alignment of the pipe and all that, but the spec book would have to be modified to include the EDA requirements, and updated, labor rates and things like that as well too. So that would have to be changed, but I think the rest of it could stay the same. And as far as cost of the project, I should say time frame of the project, it looks like I agree with what Dave said with the the end of March completion date. I think would be plenty of time. As far as impact of cost, though, I do see where going this route will cost a bit more potentially. We do have the uptick charges, though, from Highland Construction for the time, the increase in, say, materials and labor from last year of about $102,000. I think we're going to see probably closer to a couple $100,000 change on that. So it's going to be potentially be up a little bit higher than that. But that's that's about where we're at, I think, dollar wise. It's I think the application for the EDA went in at 1.3 million, I believe, Dave, correct?
Yeah, $1,321,500.
Okay, so we should be covered to for that increase, if that is the case. So it's there in that application, I guess. And that's about all I have at this point.
When would they decide to ask us to do the rebid?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The question was to Mr. Botar. Go ahead.
Yeah, when will they ask us, or they may not, but when would they ask us to do the rebid?
When would we know?
Would we know that at the end of May, or would that be July?
That would be, what I would advise is to wait till you have the grant award. So when we have the grant award letter, so that's July, let's put July 1st. That would be the time to ask the question and say, great, appreciate the grant. By the way, this is the strategy I know I discussed months ago with staff, is we were trying to figure out how we would frame the question to EDA. One, when to ask the question, and how to frame the question. So the when is after grant award. How to frame the question, the way I see it is simply indicate to them, appreciate the grant, prepared to move forward with the project. We did bid the project last summer. Can we amend the project that was bid last summer to simply incorporate the EDA boilerplate contract requirements? And and that would of course require the contractor to agree. But let's assume that the contractor is amenable for that for a moment. That would be the question to ask EDA. So when is when you have your grant award letter, and the question would be, great, we had a bid from last summer, can we still use it if we do these things? And see what their response is.
This is Justin. I think that's a good path. And the next part of my observation might best be done in executive session, but we have a bound contract with the contractor now, right? We're just waiting to give them a notice of proceed. That being the case, the rebidding process would involve terminating a contract that we should probably put a little thought into. They're into this project and have been holding material invoices, I think, from what I've heard.
It's true.
You need to think about what the implications there might be. That's all.
Well, this is Brad Olin. I'm with Highlander Construction. And I can tell you that we got a hell of a lot more in it than just the material costs. Okay. All those costs, no offense to you, Mark, but all those costs that you guys are using now for your estimates for your grant, they came from me. They came from us. Okay. And all the work that we've done working with the pump supplier and everybody else to come up with a workable project for you guys, that also came from us. Okay. So we've been in this project from the get-go. Okay. And all we got to show for it now is $80-some thousand on the first phase. We've been in it to win it, as they say. Right. So I think you can appreciate when I'm sitting here now and I feel like I'm getting kicked in the curb. Okay. And so all I can tell you is that we've tried to do our part and be a good partner with the owner and with the engineer. And we expect to be treated fairly. Okay, and that's all I can say. And you're correct. We do have a contract for that.
And the contract wasn't last summer. This contract was awarded March 7th of last
I
year.
mean, we've been sitting on this for a long time.
Right.
And Mark's right about the increases. So what we've offered for an increase, rebid it and see what you get.
Oh, yeah.
Because this market right now is insane. I'm not just saying that. And if you guys don't understand that, I'm sorry, but it's a crazy world that we live in right now in construction. And you gotta just understand it.
And all the
It's gonna
pipe
be up.
alone.
Well, right now, as far as I'm concerned, if we're gonna go this route, the invoice I sent in for that pipe, don't pay it, because that pipe belongs to me. All right, and the other pipe that we bought, I'll pay you back for that, because that's my pipe as well. Okay, and then we'll go from there. All right, because I get it, and I understand you guys gotta do what you gotta do, but it's not a fair thing to do.
There's more things in this. He's assuming that we've already got the grant. What happens when we get to May and we get refused on the grant? He started out with a statement that we've already spent part of the first grant. We don't even have any of the first grant. We paid for the preliminary work out of our money, not out of the grant money.
The first grant that you're speaking on is a reimbursable grant. You have to spend it to receive it.
But we haven't used any of that grant, have we?
You have about 186,000 left.
Use it for
You
phase.
did
You
use part
used it
of-
for phase one.
You did use part of that grant for phase one.
Mhm.
Okay.
So can I just ask a question? We originally were working on submitting a bid or a grant proposal that had a 50-50 split. We did 50% and somebody else, I think, was it EDS?
I don't know.
Was it ARPA funds? Was it EDS? Who was going to give us the original 50-50 money?
And then this new one come up.
So.
No, but I wanna know about the
David,
first.
they're talking about before the 80-20 split, it was originally a 50-50 split, then you guys received more funding and it went to an
But
80-20
he
split.
wants to know what grant
Hold on.
that was.
Who were we going to get that 50-50 money?
From my knowledge, it was ESD, and then we went this route,
ESD
we went
with
this route.
ARPA, right?
Wasn't our problem.
When we applied for that, there wasn't even any ARPA program.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. So who do we apply with for the first 50-50 grant?
The application was never completely submitted, it was brought to your guys' attention.
Yeah.
Tracy was going to be in the works to start it, then we made it to ESD received funding for an 80-20 grant split.
What I'm trying to
And we decided to go with that one.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to find out is, if when the original bid went out, and we're saying we need contract, certain EDA contract requirements in that, for that bid, were those requirements needed when the original bid went out? And if they were, then why do we need to add them if they were already in the bid?
Because we did not have a grant award in the summer of 2021 from EDA. And you have to have the grant award to get the grant number, which has to be referenced in the bid documents. Just so I'm clear, clear to you, I was not involved in the award of recommending or the award of the contract to Highlander last summer. I was focused on the EDA grant. Clearly a fair question, where were we last summer? The other funding that was discussed last summer, so we had the EDA grant for 50%. We had the balance of the ESD money. And then there was discussion, this is at the staff level, of possibly approaching the county for their allocation, for an allocation of their federal ARPA funds. There was also discussion of the IDA borrowing the money from some other party. When that was raised, I indicated that would seriously complicate the EDA application. EDA funds, you can't have a bank having a first lien position on the infrastructure financed by EDA. So I raised that as a real issue. So we were going back and forth in the summer of 2021 trying to figure this out. At that time, in my discussions with EDA, they indicated there was no longer any money available in the 50-50 program. However, a new grant program was coming down the pike, coming down the street with the 80-20% grant rate. So that's where we shifted attention from filing an application for the 50-50 program to getting an application ready for the 80-20 program. So that's just a little bit more background information.
John, I called up Mark Calpe to check on these grants, and I apologize, I didn't write down the name of the grant that we applied for. But we applied for that 50-50 grant. The grant application was accepted and it was green lighted, which means it was ready to be acted on. And we have never withdrawn that application. I don't know that it's even possible. The program that we're in became available in July of last year. They started taking applications for it, and they made an announcement in October of last year. They already had 529 applications for this grant, and we were from July until the last of March completing our application. In fact, I think we completed it the last week or 2 weeks that it was acceptable to complete it. So there's a whole slew of people that have applied ahead of us for this grant. I think we operated from August up until last week with nobody really in charge of this organization, and that was really a handicap for us to go through. I got into it way more than I should, and I apologize for me getting carried away with trying to get this done, but there's a number of things that we have to decide. Number one, this contractor was awarded the contract subject to that grant, and that grant was named specifically, which was a 50% funding thing. We, on our own, switched grant applications. I don't know where that leads. Rick, I sure as heck ain't no lawyer.
But if you need some advice.
No, but I don't know where that leaves us with accepting that awarding that contract March 7th of last year, subject to us getting that grant, that 50% grant. That's the wording of the acceptance of the award.
So can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
So are you saying we have $700,000 available to us, been green lighted, but which hasn't been canceled?
Mark Callipy said that grant was sent in and it was received and it was green lighted.
Okay.
I don't know how much it was for. I just
Okay, so,
same thing.
right, but so my, if I may, my concern today would be, and I apologize, I don't understand.
I'm Brad.
Brad, I apologize.
It's okay.
To Brad. So going forward, my concern would be, the dates I would work with, end of May is date number one. And for me, end of May means one of two things. We either get the grant and then we have to make another decision, or we don't get the grant and the path is a little clearer and we have to get money from somewhere else. So May, end of May is critical. And then end of May would be what I would ask Brad. Is end of May, because
Yeah.
the contract we signed, give me just 1 second, because I'm really on your side. But the contract, because he's the little guy. The contract we signed says it, subject to funding, receipt of funding, so that's there. And you guys have been very patient, I said that meetings ago, but to me, the critical time here is, end of May, and things clear up. We either go another way or continue to go this way, and then we have some issues to address, specifically with you, Brad. Or it gets clear, we're not getting the money, we move forward, we get the money somewhere else and we complete the project. To me, it's as simple as that. What happened before, I have no idea, and speaking for myself and not for anybody on board, it really doesn't matter anymore. We gotta get a sewer in and we've gotta take care of the contractor.
Exactly. You gotta forget about previous granting cycles because it doesn't mean anything.
No.
This, and we're all for you, but unless EDA steps up and issues a decision, it doesn't matter because we're at the mercy of that grant application and EDA to fulfill the obligation. Having worked at the US Department of Commerce, having worked in the EDA for 5 years, that's just the way it's done. As they've suggested before, they're not moving any quicker because there's 520 people wanting a decision to move ahead in their projects. They just say, don't, I'm not saying this to you, but this is what I'm saying.
Recognize it, but we do all municipal work.
Right,
so
it's just the
everything's done at different
ugliness
levels.
of the
We feel
system,
it all the time.
then with COVID and everything. So again, I think we're at the point where we all want this to happen. We all like the partners here. We just gotta wait on process that we've been given from.
Well,
From sitting in your guys' seat, I totally get it because the money's there and you gotta get it. So
We have to understand.
I do, yeah,
Well,
I do understand that part.
We had two conflicting statements, so You said we never applied and Mark or somebody said it was granted, so which?
No, Herb said it was granted.
It couldn't have been granted, or
Mark
you wouldn't have
Our
gotten
guy
an
from the
application
Water and
process.
Sewer Authority
Yeah,
told me the application had gone in and it had been green lighted. And he is an expert.
well, can we get that bottom line?
But the thing is, if that was awarded, this is the same pot of money. You can't have that grant and apply for this grant again.
Well, so we need to get a determination on that question. Did the 50/50 grant did that application go in and did it get approved?
But because your financing is completely different, what you need to come up with if
Right.
that's the case.
So who knows the answer to that question?
What do we need to know to get the answer to that question?
The person that would really know that answer is Tracy.
This is Justin, sorry to interrupt. It may help kind of streamline the conversation a little bit. Rick and I had a call this morning for about 2 hours with Cuba Milk, and then again, another hour and a half call with county folks today. Some of that stuff, I think we need to visit an executive session on the real estate side of the world. And also a little bit of financial planning as it relates to county funding. Without going too far down the road, within calendar year 2022, we've got this project paid for. And I think staying the course with the contractor as it stands right now for today makes sense. If Dave Votard can advance the conversation with EDA to the extent that we get a grant award, great. We don't need it to cash flow the project. I can just tell you that right now. To have that money come back in and pay us back, that would be fantastic. And if Dave can focus on getting the prior bid package approved and moving forward, that's the home run. But I think if we get to May and get a grant award and then EDA says, no, you got to throw out your contract and rebid.
No, but that's a different rat hole. We're not.
I know, that's what we're trying to avoid, yeah.
We're not answering the question, is that?
Somebody should know if we got issued $700,000.
Yeah.
If nobody here knows it, then you didn't get issued. I will venture a guess that we did not get $700,000.
Nobody said that we were awarded $700,000.
We have 700 in the bank.
Person said that the grant application
Okay,
had
the
been sent
application.
in and it had been green lighted, but it had never gone through the process because we chose to change funding streams.
Okay, so we have no money. We're reliant
So is
on-
that grant dead then, or what?
Yes, because that would be a different grant and a different grant cycle. You see what I'm saying when they
No,
change?
I'm asking her.
Okay.
No, is that grant dead then or not?
I didn't.
Is that 50/50 grant
Yeah, did
dead?
Mark think it was dead?
Mark did not say whether it was dead or not. He did not say whether it was still active or not.
But Herb said that it was never taken back. It wasn't.
He said we never rescinded our application for the grant.
Okay,
The grant application was still there. I don't know the state. He can tell us in a matter of hours what it is.
Who is Mark Kelsey?
Mark Callipy is a finance person that's worked for the Water and Sewer Department and did the sewer project for us in Fairhaven. And he's worked for us ever since then. And he is an expert on these financing things, and he's completely truthful. I don't mind giving his telephone number and you talking to him because he will do that for me. Who asked who that was? Was it you?
I did, David Botar.
Okay.
so.
As a recommendation, I think let's chase down the grant viability and then determine whether there's a bidding issue.
So I'm sorry, Justin, you say grant viability of the first grant or the second grant?
Either one, don't care.
Can we decide the first grant is dead? Because it's a different cycle. Taylor, you're saying, yes, it's dead. We're not going there. and we did not receive any notice one way or the other. on
I
that
do
grant.
not have an award letter for this 50/50 split.
All right.
Or,
The only award letter I have is for the ESG funding of $283,000.
okay,
You have expended phase 1 of that grant, leaves you with $186,000.
and we've already spent that too, because,
Right.
okay,
Yeah, pretty much.
all right, so. I guess going back to me, then if May comes and we're awarded the grant, we have another discussion with Brad. Or we have to have some type of understanding, because then based on Dave's timeline, end of May is, we know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. End of July, we can submit bids if we have to. But I'm not prepared to discuss that today, because I have no idea what's gonna
I
happen.
think we need to discuss that. I think it's only fair for us to let this contractor know what position we are in with him. But I personally will absolutely not vote to rebid this contract. I think him telling us we should ask them if we should rebid it is one of the most stupid things I've ever heard. Why in the world would we ask them if we should rebid it?
Well, after it's awarded.
What?
After,
After it's awarded, why should we? We
No,
should
that's-
just, we
that's
should
my
just
thought.
award the bid and do it. Why would we ask them if they want us to rebid it? Well, my understanding of the rebidding process is what he just said. It's not the age of the bid or the age of the bid or the amount of the bid. It's the language in the bid that they want to make us qualify for their loan. And I would think between Mark and the contractor, they could redo the language in it. I don't think that's changing the bid, John,
It's
so
not
that-
changing the bid, but what about every other contractor?
Right.
the bid,
They weren't bidding, the language changes, then why wasn't every other contractor allowed to have the same language and bid on the same language?
but the specifications and the pricing isn't changing.
it's the same.
understand.
It's just language that makes the bid acceptable to the grant people.
Well, maybe we should have these discussions.
Yeah, it's just boilerplate stuff that would have to be added in. Again, there's a path forward here. We gotta, once you guys are comfortable getting into executive, and I think we can give some
Yeah.
comfort to Brad, that we don't have to change horses in May, June, or July. There's a path here. I think the board just needs to get a bit of an update, and we have a bundle of project funding to deploy it on a cash flow basis. We've got that established.
So would we be, given that we're going to discuss purchase or sale of land, Justin, we would be okay to enter an executive session right now. Can I make that motion?
Second,
Yeah, I defer to you folks on who could stay in. We have a county rep here, but Steve Lynch is integral to the conversation, so I defer to you. And certainly Brad, if he wants to stick around, if he's not in, I think we have the ability to give him some comfort afterwards. And I just want to kind of focus on that a little bit.
No, I don't need to be here.
you want us to call you?
You guys don't need me here. So that's okay. I get it. And I understand what you guys are up against. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I understand it's about getting the money and getting the grant. I get that. Okay, we do. We understand it. We understand how the game is played, but like I said, we've got a pretty big stake in this thing. We're a part of it, and I don't think that IDA is just going to kick us to the curb. We don't
No.
think that's going to happen. So if it comes to where you don't have the choice to bid it, you're still, I guess, to put it bluntly, you're going to have to deal with us. Okay, and that's what's going to have to happen. So because it is what it is. So,
No.
and I recognize that, and understand. We don't like it. And it would have been a little better for us to have a little bit of understanding of how this whole mechanism went about as time went on. So all I can say, but
Well,
I mean,
obviously, we didn't completely
Us
understand.
too.
I get it. I understand. But I do hear what I say about the pipe. I don't want to get paid that other invoice right now. Okay, I'm not interested in that. And in fact, I just assume pay IDA back for the pipe that I do. Okay, and that's ours. And I have if you have no issues with that, I just assume do that. Levels this cable. I think we should get our retainage on the first section. We can make application that through Mark, so we can get cleaned off of that part of the contract. I think we can do that. And then we'll be here if you need us.
Time wise, waiting until some date in May is not a horrendous handicap for you.
Oh, I think it's a horrendous handicap, whoever's gonna come in and start on the work, okay, because you're right here, okay? And I'm not saying Mark's time estimates are wrong, they're not, it's just that whoever's the contractor, you'll be back here this time next year, waiting to see when you're gonna start the pump station. I would bet the farm on that one. So, that's just because the market that we're in right now, it's nobody's fault, it just is.
Yeah.
So, but we're here if you need us, call us, we'll be happy to help you all we can.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All in favor?
All right.